Well, hello again and welcome to another episode of Interwoven from the Weave. As always, we are focused on helping entrepreneurs and businesses from around the region who are doing amazing things in the field of sustainability. This time is no different. I don't want to keep you in suspense any longer, so let's have a quick look at what's coming up in this episode. We have a great conversation with Chamroo, who is using his talents to help communities particularly affected by knife crime. A conversation with Dom Tyler, who is using his skills in software creation to tackle the growing problem of electronic waste. James gives his thoughts on the book Measure What Matters by John Doerr. And finally we have Temini Kasumu sharing her passion for female wellness as well as hygiene products made from waste banana fibres. So enough talking from me, let's get going with an insightful look in how software can be used to tackle the massive but often unseen problem of electronic waste.
Today I'm really pleased to have a discussion with Dom Tyler. He's a highly experienced software CRM developer. He's been sort of in the local area running his businesses for a number of years. Dom is somebody that I've known, like I say, for a number of years, fully experienced in that area. We will be sort of discussing his journey and some of the things that he's been involved with. So welcome, Dom. I'd like to just start off with just a very sort of kind of introduction to how you got into software. How did you get into the world of CRMs and the world of technologies and things like that? What was it that drove you?
Okay, bit of a fluke, really, to be honest with you, James. And thanks for the fantastic intro. I'll zoom back a little bit, but I'll make it a very brief bio. So I kind of pretty much flunked at school. I wasn't very academic in a classical sense. And then my father had an opportunity to work in Turkey, so I followed out there with him, somehow managed to qualify as an English teacher. Again, a fluke, teaching English as a foreign language. Got on well there, but the girl I was engaged with, that kind of fell apart. So I came back to the UK and managed to land a job. You notice the trend here is a lot of flukes. Managed to land a job at a software company in sales. And there was no systems for running my job. And it's quite complex to link up when you're that age, to link up the suppliers and the purchase orders and the customers and the invoices. And there wasn't any type of system for that. So I started picking up Excel first and then Microsoft Access, and Access couldn't do what I needed. So I decided to write my own system bit by bit. And before I knew it, I was kind of coding with no intention of ever being a software developer or any interest, until the development team kind of offered me double the salary to move from sales. And then funnily enough, I said yes. So I did that for quite a while. And then when I met my now ex-wife, she kind of made me more career focused. And shortly after that, I became managing director of that business and moved away from the technical stuff, more to focus on the commercial side of things, which I found a lot more interesting, the grey areas of people versus the black and whiteness of computers, if you like. Okay. So that's where it all started.
Yeah, I think everybody's, we call it flukes or opportunities, or just things that manifest themselves when they kind of bump into you and you think, oh, that's a great idea. I'll go off and explore that. I think everybody's career is peppered with those particular areas.
Well, the business that I'd mentioned that I'd kind of fluked my way into from sales into from development into sales, I left there with a lot of skills that I hadn't had previously with regarding kind of automation and managing people and marketing and sales, a little bit of everything. And I thought I could probably go it alone. So I managed to kind of bootstrap the first 3 or 4 months and built a nice system with some developers, using some developers in the Philippines and India that I managed to interview. And then just started networking. I think you were one of the first, if not the first people that I'd found on LinkedIn, actually, James, when I decided that was the way I had to go to kind of get my name out there. And then it kind of picked up from there. But then funnily enough, my biggest client from Conclusis then asked, they were paying me a day rate, and they said, we can't afford this. You're getting paid more than the CEO like this. So we've got to employ you instead. And it was a nice offer, but it wasn't the money really. It was the fact that I was going to and from Africa constantly that was exciting to me. Yeah. So that kind of escalated my skill level even more. And during that period, I was then, I'd reached out to some software developers and got introduced to Gennari as one of them. As part of me actually introducing Gennari to the Africa business. And the previous owner of Gennari was kind of looking to exit at the time that I was looking to get back into running a business. So when I was running the business that I've mentioned at the start, I was managing director, but I wasn't the owner or the chair. But I liked the idea of building something up. And Gennari was in a perfect position for me. I like the kind of the uphill struggle. That's the exciting part. Yeah. And it had one developer and a few customers, and the technology was quite old. And I could see all these challenges, but I could see ways past them. I knew it was going to be a couple of years worth of hard work, but I built up a little bit of surplus from the contract in Africa, the work in Africa. So yeah, that's when I came to kind of buying Gennari.
As the aging population goes on, the demographics change, and there will probably be more people going to look to buy businesses, and maybe even people looking to exit businesses as well, because of that maturity of that process. So one of the things that when you're in that kind of mindset about buying another business, in your head, what was that process? Because it's quite a scary thing to do in a lot of respects, isn't it? It's quite daunting because you're actually, first and foremost, there's a lot of trust that you're instilling within that particular area, but also you've got to kind of imagine, like you say, you saw the problems and you saw some of the solutions that you could provide. But in terms of that kind of thinking process, what was your due diligence? What did you feel like you needed to cover that made you and got you to that point of comfort to actually make that commitment?
Well, once we'd established that there was some interest on both sides, it started out with months and months worth of conversations, general conversations, slightly unstructured, if you like, what the mission of the business was, the history of the business, who'd previously worked in it, what type of customers were interested, why some of the sales didn't work, those type of things. But then over time, it became a lot more structured, and we started putting together lists of things that we want to cover. For example, we spoke about every single customer and every key person at every customer in detail. And so we were meeting at least once a week for 4 to 5 hours at a time for somewhere between 6 and 9 months. So a lot of time went into the due diligence. Obviously, that could be compressed, but I think the time between those meetings was time to reflect and come up with new questions. So I think it's a good idea to put that much time in. So that was really interesting because it was giving me an opportunity to ask questions about, for example, what future work there could be. Because obviously when you're purchasing a new business, cash flow is critical. If you're buying a new business that's just covering its costs, you have to think about, how's it going to cover my costs? What am I going to do in how's the first 6 months going to go? Can this brand new guy coming in win trust and upsell to them all in 6 months? So coming up with a strategy for every single customer to maximize my chance of having an upsell. So to win their trust and maximize the chance of an upsell, that was really, really important. So that goes hand in hand, obviously, with the financials. So I wanted to understand all of our regular purchases, all of our sales, as many as going back as far as possible, especially the ones we'd lost. I was really interested in the ones that we'd lost and where we captured the reasons for why and what we might have done differently in hindsight to kind of almost help train me for new sales. But my initial focus for the first period of time wasn't to make new sales. It was to get as much as I possibly could from the existing customers. So part of it was the boring stuff, like going through all the user and technical support stuff to get an idea of how au fait with computers customers were, reporting on whether they were even worth keeping in some cases. If they're paying us that per month and spending that much of our time, maybe it's not worth it, type thing. A little bit ruthless in some ways, but you don't want to come in guns blazing. Because you're really in the back foot, obviously, being a new face. And then the critical final part, once everything had been agreed, the critical final part was, how do you announce it publicly and to individual customers? And you can't go around to 30 customers in a month, obviously. So there's 3 months worth of organising these visits and sitting in front of them, and you don't know what they're going to say. You promised us this training and we've paid for it, and that's a tricky conversation when you're watching cash flow. So it's very, very difficult, but very exciting. And I could see the potential there.
It's that bit, isn't it? That's seeing the potential and looking past the, there will always be those difficult conversations, won't there? Because not everybody can be treated in exactly the same way. And there's only one of you, or and you've got to disperse your time effectively around. So it must have been, challenging in a lot of respects in that regard. But I guess that what you saw at the end of all of this was something that could take your vision of a business and actually be the carrier of it, the brand that you could see and develop. So what was it then, realistically, looking at that kind of that brand development, that you felt that you could make your own, having taken on an existing brand? What was it that you felt that you would be bringing in that would make this unique to you?
Well, one of the challenges that Junari had, and the motivation for the previous incumbent to sell, was that they'd built a hell of a lot of additional features on old technology. This would be akin to me getting a 40-year-old car and doing it up constantly for 40 years, and it still obviously won't be the same quality as what a large car manufacturer can create with 40 years worth of additional technology. So we were left with that 40-year-old car that had a million plugins, but it didn't do a lot of the new stuff. So it had no awareness of things like social media or a lot of the stuff that we take for granted in new systems. So I'd become aware of Odoo, which was the replacement for what we'd done. But I wasn't sure how to handle, how do we take a lot of those enhancements that we created with their old technology, which were excellent, very good. The guy who owned the business for me was a very good software architect, and bring the best bits of those in. So we started to do that and made a couple of good sales in that first year to carry us forward. And then part of my due diligence that I forgot to mention was I was profiling past colleagues, past staff, because there was only one member of staff left in the business. And I had in my mind that probably the place to start for re-recruiting people would be to reach out to people who used to work for us and say, well, we're starting up again. I'm the new guy. Do you fancy having a chat? And the one person who stuck out was the person who helped set up the business in the first place, who's Russell Briggs, who's still with me now. And so he came in, and then that kind of took us to the next level. Then I had a technical person who was there full time and very forward thinking and shared my vision, and we worked very well together.
Because this has been a 5-year journey, isn't it? So around that sort of length of time within that, and you've grown the business substantially within that period. And I know that you're working with a lot more customers, and it must give you a great deal of satisfaction to know that that's the journey that you've been on. In terms of maybe one thing that you feel really proud of in that journey, can you grab one thing that you think, I think that really is a statement of success?
I think it was learning the new platform that we had no experience with, which is Odoo, which is what we now sell all these years later. Learning it inside out, obsessing over it, and then going to customers and making it sound like we had a lot of experience with it, until I eventually made some sales, and significantly bigger sales than what we'd been making previously. And it was that courage to go in there and talk about how manufacturing worked, having never been in a manufacturing role, but just watched videos and played around with the system, and talk about all these other parts of the system and demo it confidently. I've got to be honest, the first couple of times I did that didn't probably go so well, but you got to fail forward, haven't you? Fail fast.
There's a couple of things there, one of which is confidence, right? How valuable that is. And that's something that it can't be taught. It has to be created in your own belief. You invested all of that time, effort, and due diligence into the software, into understanding it, so that you had the confidence to stand in front of somebody, even though it didn't work on the first couple of occasions. I don't know how long it took you to learn about the language and learn about it from that point of view, but I imagine it was a pretty intense process. I think there's a great deal about that from a business perspective. Is confidence is so important, and it resonates, and it manifests itself in our body language, in the way that we talk, and the way that we can actually conduct ourselves. I know that we touched on this, but the key change, or the key area of development, has become maybe more about sustainability concept, this idea of how do we create something more circular? How do we do something? So how did you get from what you were doing within the CRM world and the customers you were working with to recognizing that there needs to be more, there needs to be progression and change within your industry, and you wanted to be a part of that?
Yeah. So before I even bought Junari, my whole vision was to identify an opportunity where we could resell a product, because bespoke work isn't particularly scalable and it's very expensive to deliver, and there's a lot of risk on individual people. You can't automate bespoke. That's the whole point of it being bespoke. So you charge a premium, but it's still not that scalable, not without a lot of effort and risk. So if you think, if somebody comes to you with a reasonable budget for a bespoke system, that's got to be an opportunity to check out the market. So you look and think, well, why didn't you get something off the shelf? Was it the cost or the features or the advertising? It's something worth looking at. So I've been doing that for every customer, and in every case, I was putting myself in their shoes after they've made a purchase, myself in their shoes, thinking, if I had been in your shoes, I probably wouldn't have actually gone for us. I might have got that off the shelf. So that's not a great option, until we picked up a project for a business called ICX in Whittam, which is very close to where we're based, in ITAD, IT Asset Disposal. So we created this system for them. I thought it was an okay system, but more interesting to me was that the two other systems in the world that did the same thing, I didn't really rate those. I looked at them and I could see I realized what ICX needed. I could see what they were trying to do, and I understood why they came to us. So the obvious place to go is back to them. Well, we're already doing your project. You've committed to us. Why didn't you go with these other systems? And that gave me enough reason to look very deeply into the market. So I started testing the market, talking to potential prospects, finding out what they used, what they didn't like about it, and started obsessing over all the hashtags on social media and learning what all the pains were in the industry, and decided to take the risk and put a significant amount of time, a lot of our own time as well. And this is Russell, who I mentioned earlier, and myself, building this system called Recycly. We're now at the point where we've pretty much finished it in the last week or so, finished what we call the MVP, the minimum viable product, although there's a roadmap for another 3 or 4 years. And we've got customers lined up, ready for us to kind of do everything live. We're actually deploying one now. Back to ICX, we're giving them the revised version of the system. And we've got customers lined up, and we're going to start deploying from January properly. And every deployment's going to get quicker and more streamlined, and then we'll build the business from there.
I'm coming at this from a point of view of a complete novice. So what is IT asset disposal? What does it actually do?
This is where organizations will have hundreds, even thousands of laptops usually. And every 3 to 5 years, they will want to replace those laptops. And you can't just chuck them in the bin. I mean, there's a couple of reasons you can't just chuck them in the bin. Firstly, it's a bit of a stupid thing to do. But also there's a lot of toxic waste there. That's called e-waste. 55 to 60 million tons of e-waste a year globally is just stuck into landfill, which is shocking. That's 80% of everything that we could have rescued has actually gone into landfill. That's toxic for the environment and the air and the water system. So even if there was no other reason to do this, reducing that effect, it would be pretty amazing. So ITAD businesses are the ones who will collect those, but they will also destroy them responsibly. So they will either refurbish them, or they'll destroy them, or they'll harvest the parts. But the critical bit is the hard drives. That's where the data is stored. So if you've got military, schools, hospitals, anywhere where there's confidential information, banks, it's absolutely critical that that stuff is destroyed properly. But the hard drive can still be left usable. So it's quite a unique industry. They've got 2 sales pipelines. One pipeline is they call them inbound orders. It's where they acquire the equipment in the first place. So they'll have a deal with Barclays, for example, to collect their 500 laptops from 3 branches every 3 years. And then they have the outbound orders, which might be they sell via eBay or Amazon or directly on their own e-commerce site. And then the bit in the middle is where they do all the processing, and they might give money back to the customer. They have a contract for that. So there's actually a lot of parts to that, and it's quite a complex business setup. And I felt, having understood that the other 2 pieces of software out there didn't cater for it sufficiently. They left a lot of manual processes in the middle, and I could see how that we could solve that with years and years of effort, which is what we've put in.
Am I right then in saying that the process might well be laptops or hardware that comes to you? You reconfigure it and then resell it, or do you strip it of its component parts? Because I also know from research and stuff that there is an awful lot of precious metals embedded in hardware. But in that respect, is there a marketplace that you're potentially taking that area, the metals and the other components?
Well, so what we're doing is creating the software to run those ITAD businesses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as opposed to actually being an ITAD business ourselves, because that can give us a gigantic reach globally, rather than just kind of creating a brand new fantastic ITAD business. We could reach thousands of ITAD businesses around the world. And so when they collect, typically what they'll get is like a poorly formatted asset list and a photo of a pile of equipment.
Right.
And then they'll say, can you collect these 200 laptops? And then they'll have to look and think, well, it doesn't look like 200 laptops, just like a mess. We'll take your word for it. Then they take them in for an audit, basically. And they have to one by one assess them. Sometimes you can see straight away that's clearly not going to make it. And sometimes they'll think, we might as well harvest the parts from that, including the metals. But sometimes it might be that you can take the RAM out, or the screen might be reusable. So there's different levels of harvesting. And then sometimes they're just beyond any economical repair and they have to be completely destroyed. So they go through. So there's these different processing actions they take, and then hopefully as many as possible, which is a really good KPI for these ITAD businesses, financially, but also from an environmental perspective, is how many they can refurbish to resell. So as you've kind of hinted, they often upgrade them in the meantime. So the RAM that they've taken out of those laptops over there that's sat in a box, that can go in this laptop over here to upgrade it so that it's more saleable in e-commerce.
Cool. So how do you, in that business, how do you then judge your success? Is it upon the success of your customers doing more of their ITAD work, and therefore the better that they can do it through your software is a measure of success to your business? Are you measuring that in carbon, in other metrics other than just simply financial or whatever?
That's a very good question. I know it sounds a bit grandiose, but the final metric, the final KPI we'd like to get to, bear in mind we're just starting to roll this out, could be how many potential lives we've saved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you reverse that back to how much e-waste has been reduced and the toxic effect of that e-waste, so we can start measuring by capturing anonymous data what the performance of these ITAD businesses was like at the point they started using the system. And then over a 1 year period, what the average increase is and how many users we've got overall. And we should be able to actually work out roughly what that is and refine those KPIs over time. So if we were serving 1,000 ITAD businesses and reducing that 60 million tonnes even by 1 million tonnes globally, and that 60 million tonnes was responsible for X number of people's health issues, we could calculate how many people's health we have improved or potentially lives we've saved. So that's a nice end goal KPI there.
It's a fabulous one, actually. I don't think it's grandiose at all. I think, we're living in a world where things are rapidly deteriorating. And I think that we need to have businesses like yours that generally will address the damage that we're doing. And it's regenerative. And if we can express that in something as human as the quality of people's lives, or indeed longevity of people's lives, or just simply in their lives, then I think at that particular point it becomes more meaningful. So we know a little bit more about that kind of the business and the way that it's going. And your vision of the future, right? This is a big industry, isn't it? This is a big problem that needs to be done. And you're looking at it from that perspective. So tell me that you've spoken about lives saved, but in your world of presenting a vision of recycling in the future, what does it look like? What do you imagine going to work is like in 10 years' time?
For us at Recycling, well, much as I love sales, I'm never going to be able to sell to 5,000 ITAD businesses around the world, because that would be the rest of my life taken up with sales. And I'm really keen on the idea of resellers. So I've been working on that for the last 18 months. And about 2 weeks ago, we signed up our first reseller who we're kind of training now. So we've come up with a really nice reseller agreement. And eventually that person who was specifically chosen to be employed into the business at some point will then be a channel manager who can then recruit other resellers and gradually pass across his customers to them. So the idea is that they'll have their own customers and will effectively be selling Recycling to them to sell to their customers, and they'll take a little bit of the upfront fee and some of the ongoing costs to support their own customers. That's the only way we're going to get gigantic reach, which is what we're aiming for. So we're obviously starting in the UK. We've identified Germany and the Nordic regions and then the rest of Europe, and then other English-speaking countries, probably leaving America till last because they've got quite a lot of competition there, even though we don't rate that competition, as I said earlier. Still not worth going there until we can knock them off their pedestals comfortably.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right, excellent. We do love to hear about ambition, particularly ambitious businesses within the region. So I think, having that mindset is hugely encouraging. Dominic, of 19 years of age, right? 18, 19 years of age. What advice do you give him in this world of business?
Stop picking fights and making trouble. Concentrate on your career. Don't put bad stuff into your body because it slows everything down. I don't know. I'm quite happy with the way it's gone, to be honest. I think I've got the right balance I'm quite happy with the balance of risks that I've taken, and I've learned to become. I quite enjoyed the journey of development, knowing now that the things I did 5 years ago I would do better now. I find exciting. I don't think I would have wanted a further push. Because the journey is the exciting part, isn't it? So
yeah,
I probably wouldn't. I probably would have just said treat my body more sensibly than I did. I've always exercised, but I countered that with other stuff. So,
quick fire round. Just some personal questions. Favorite band?
Guns N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses. Okay, excellent. Last TV box set or movie that you watched that you thought was really good?
I only watch stuff with the kids, really. Normally action films and things like that. So I can't think of one, I'm afraid.
Well, I saw a post on LinkedIn where you were recommending The Founder. Was it The Founder?
Oh, The Founder. That's fantastic. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Because I actually then went off and looked that up and I watched it. And I thought it was absolutely cracking. A couple of things I thought it was really good as a demonstration of innovation at that time from the brothers, but it was also ethically quite a challenging film as well. Favorite book? Do you ever get a chance to read, listen to books?
I listen to a lot of books. I really like Black Box. Actually, I was going to say Black Box Thinking, but if I had to go all the way back to the roots of what changed my thinking, it would be E-Myth Revisited. I would still, if I had to give one book to my 19-year-old self, it would be The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber.
All right. Okay. Excellent. And your favorite meal on your birthday?
Oh, wow. It would be an Iskender kebab, because I lived in Turkey for a long time and I loved that food there.
Dominic started his journey as a creator of content management solutions for companies. Then turning his sights on electronic waste is just the sort of entrepreneurial vision I love seeing in my time working for The Weave. Considering he's looking to expand, I can't wait to hear the continued news of the positive impact that he and his team is going to make. The fact that he wants to be able to measure his success in lives saved is another testament to his ethics and vision. Up next, we have James talking about the book Measure What Matters by John Doerr.
Welcome to The Weave's Interwoven book review. And we try to bring you book reviews just because we firmly believe that it's like having a mentor in your pocket when you read. It's like delving into the minds of the author and certainly drawing into their wisdom. So in this particular review, we're going to look at a book written by a guy called John Doerr, and it's called Measure What Matters. And it was published by Penguin. And it's a real sort of kind of idea to this whole concept of OKRs and the idea that it can drive growth. And on the book in the cover, it says it can, create a multiple of growth within anything that we do, maybe but as much as 10 times more effectively than if we don't have this kind of goal-setting mindset. So in Measure What Matters, the author, John Doerr, has masterfully presented the concepts of OKRs. It's a method pivoted towards propelling businesses and startups to achieve their goals. So Doerr, he breathes real life into what can be a daunting world of goal setting. And ultimately, he does this with the narrative built around real businesses, the anecdotes and invaluable lessons learned from industry and from the leaders within those industries like Intel, Google, and as much as LinkedIn as well. So one of the key strengths of the books lies in its clarity and its way that it elucidates the whole kind of ideas of objectives and key results. Doerr's skillfully structured every single chapter around the major principles of the practice. He's done this in a really accessible and incredibly easy way for readers to digest the message, and also through the power of storytelling keeps you engaged and ultimately blending that kind of idea of practical wisdom with personal insights. So the book is not just a book that is a guide, it's an essential aspect of learning this particular process and really engaging with this particular idea of really sort of kind of setting these particular goals, looking for alignment flexibility and agility between that area, and the power of making things transparent. Beyond its sort of industry applications, or indeed the world of startups, the strategy is often, readers have a chance to revamp their own personal objectives and goals as well. I used this massively when I came to doing my master's degree. I set out what really mattered to me in terms of which particular modules I was taking, the kind of results that I was striving for, and within each module, what were those particular results, the kind of outputs that I was actually aiming to achieve. So Measure What Matters is not just a book, but it's an essential guide for everyone looking to bring that kind of alignment and flexibility into their whole mindset. So it's a must read as far as we're concerned for anyone who wants to drive their business forward and improve their productivity, improve their growth, improve their mindset, and ultimately kind of maintain that idea that goals are not just simply quantitative outcomes, they're qualitative, and they ultimately can be shaped by the narrative of the business. So when we're kind of thinking about the goal setting environments, and we use traditionally those SMART goals, the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and timely outcomes, they can sometimes become burdensome by their sheer inflexibility, and they can lead to feelings and a sense of failure or not attainment. So in this particular way, the OKR model embeds that more aspirational voice within the business, but it also gives you the opportunity to engage with a tool that has a degree of dynamism within it. You can push the boundaries more, and you can readjust your aim at any particular area, but you're always aligning yourself to the clear North Star that you're aiming towards. And I think that's where the real power of it is, from the point of view of a startup, and ultimately from the point of view of that aspirational entrepreneur. So the recommendation is Measure What Matters by John Doerr, New York Times bestseller, OKRs, the simple idea that drives 10 times growth. And we believe that it ultimately does. So good luck, good reading, and we'll catch up next time.
I always love hearing from James about the books that have impacted on his thinking. Just a reminder, if you join the free Weave community over at wearetheweave.co.uk, then you will have access to some in-depth book analyses from James. Think of it as crib notes, but supercharged. Now, we get to hear a conversation between James and Neil Chamroo. Raised in London, Neil wants to use his talents of communication with his passion for community to make a difference.
Today we're going to be talking to an entrepreneur from the University of Essex, one of the student entrepreneurs that we've worked with over the past, and somebody I think that you'll find really inspiring in terms of what he's achieved, his passion and his enthusiasm for helping and supporting the younger generation. So without much further ado, I'll introduce you to Neil. That's Neil Chamroo, who basically, like I said, was at university, is now graduated, and he's on to the next stage of his education and also the next stage in the development of his business and his business idea. So welcome, Neil. Thanks very much for joining us today.
How you doing, James? That's the first time anyone's introduced me like that. So yeah, that's really cool.
First of all, let me just go back a little bit from where we are. So just tell me a little bit about the journey from where you've come from, and how did you end up getting into university at Essex? What sort of encouraged you in that pathway?
So born and raised in Croydon, South London. And the reason as to why I got into Essex was actually through clearing. So it was my A levels weren't at the standard that I thought it would be. So therefore I actually didn't get into the offers that I came through. So yeah, I actually came through Essex through clearing. And yeah, I studied business management. I did undergraduate for business management, and that was it was something that I really wanted to do. I've always done business ever since I was young. I've always been studying business ever since GCSEs. And it was just the subject that I excelled in. Even in my A levels, it was the subject I got the highest level in. So it was always something I wanted to pursue in terms of further education. And yeah, that's basically just how I ended up in Essex, really.
Okay, so in terms of sort of kind of business and business studies, then, so you say you always wanted to kind of do it. What is it about business and that kind of world of entrepreneurship and things like that that kind of excite you?
It was always interesting. It was always like, okay, it sounds bad because I don't think I should be watching that at that age. But I was watching Wolf of Wall Street, and when I was watching a movie like that, it was just inspiring. But it wasn't essentially his lifestyle, but it was just the way he worked. It was just a way of working. It was like you would work on your own time. You're in charge of quite literally everything. Like you own everything. And it was just fascinating to me to be like, I have the ability to go and do that. Like that is a space where I can operate. That is someone I can be. And I guess just holding on to that belief and that hope, just being someone that, you can own things. You can run it the way you want to run it. It's not always go into an organization and working by their standards. You can create your own and be your own organization. And yeah, no, it's always been fascinating to kind of believe that and see that the world is in a sense run like it's run by that. Like it's all just been people running these organizations, and everything around you have been created by businesses. And yeah, it's fascinating to see the world in that way.
Excellent. A lot of what you've done in the past and what you've been involved with has been, to be fair, quite serious stuff. The things that you first came to us about were youth violence and knife crime and wanting to kind of get that. But you've worked with people, young people, and you've positioned yourself in that mentoring leadership role. What qualities in yourself do you feel maybe that you have that gives that role some grounding emphasis in your life? What is it that you really enjoy about it, but also why do you feel qualified to be involved in it that way?
Yeah. So I've been a mentor, like a qualified youth mentor, since 2021. That's when I was starting my kind of journey and working with young people and working in schools, working in alternative provisions, working in community centers, summer camps, all these kind of provisions where young people are just based and situated. And I think ever since I was young, my parents have been fostering, so I've always had a little foster sibling. Yeah, whether it's a brother or a sister, I've always had someone who's obviously going through that kind of foster system. So there's clearly something that's going on back home. Whether they're international, a lot of that we've had international kind of, in a sense, refugees that have come in and they've really needed a place to stay. And it was just natural for me to build a relationship with them. And it was almost like just instinct mentoring. Like it's not like I did it with the idea of doing it. I just kind of built that relationship with them, and they always, me and whoever that person was, we just always get along. And I guess that was like the start of the conversation when my mum was like, "You're really good with young people. Like, why are you always good with children? You should start working with them." And it was a thought that came across my mind ever since I was like 14, 15 and 16. But I was obviously a young person myself. So yeah, I guess it was at that time, it was just, waiting for the time to happen. And it's strange, like that kind of conversation, the idea of working with young people, was left when I was doing my A levels and I was, studying business at university. It was kind of a business mindset. It wasn't, what do I do in my business? It's just kind of learning everything about business, everything about the business world, and entrepreneurship. So I didn't have an idea in mind. And it just so happened to be a business working with young people. And then those two worlds just kind of collided and fitted perfectly. And I think in terms of my qualities, I think what makes me, the way I believe it, like a great mentor, is relatability and choice. You touched on it already, like a large part of what I saw growing up is not necessarily something that young people should see. I grew up in a world around that violence when Croydon was classified as knife crime capital. That was me when I was about 14, 15. When I was 15, I lost my friend to knife crime. And ever since then, it was just like a kind of an effect where I just kept seeing certain negative circumstances and situations just affect me externally. And it was just natural for me to not kind of go into that path and follow that path and still make great choices. So that's why I always tell them, I always say it's relatability and choice, because, very similar to the young people I work with, I've made choices just as bad as theirs, but how have I ended up here and how in your kind of destiny and path, you end up to something a lot more negative. That's because I've made the right decision to make those choices. So I guess I kind of bring that to young people, always tell them that relatability. A large part of the school system is like, obviously schools and these alternative provisions, they have a lack of staff, so they don't have that many role models. In fact, a lot of the schools I've actually kind of applied to and tried to work with, they're looking for male role models because they don't have that many role models in these provisions. So how that affects the young person is that they don't have that effective role model to A, someone be relatable to them, and B, to help them make the right choices. So yeah, I feel like I step in and I just fit that play, and yeah, that's why I feel like that's kind of where I got the basis of my mentoring from.
Fabulous. You've identified the problem. You've identified how you were affected by it, how you saw it, how you engaged with it. What kind of encouraged you then to see mentoring and the choices and the alternative sort of kind of perspective? What encouraged you to start to put that back into the communities? Where do you feel that you could be taking that particular piece of delivery forward? What is it that you imagine that you would love to do on a bigger scale or something within that world?
I think what started it was my first like ground experience with these young people. So in 2021, as I mentioned before, it was where I started working with young people. It was my first ever time in schools working in any sort of provision like this. And this was on behalf of an organization called City Year. They're actually a charity. And they're the ones that effectively trained me and kind of taught me that I have these qualities in order to be a qualified mentor. And they're the ones that sent me to the school in Croydon, Oasis Academy, Shirley Park. And yeah, that year that I've spent in that school was where I opened my eyes to everything. Like it was the best way to explain the first year of working at a school is like when I was last in the school, I was a student. So now the next year I've come back, not essentially the next year, but now the next time I've entered the school, I have a lanyard and I'm a staff member. So it just opens up so many things. It was like, oh, this is what teachers do when, pardon me, they're on a break. Or, oh, this is what you do when you're on break and lunch duty. Or this is where you are when, all those things that it just opened my mind. But I guess that's on a positive scale. On a more scale that I guess empowered me to work with young people, it was the lack of that pastoral relatability kind of role that young people have, that lack of mentorship. As normal in every single school, there's the academic pressure. But in communities like Croydon, in areas and neighborhoods like Croydon, like when there are, high rates of knife crime and youth violence, and there's signs of gang activity and young people doing these crimes at such young ages, it's not a thing where they need to be better in their academics. There's something going on. There's something else going on that's affecting their mental health. That's affecting, something that's come on far beyond the school. And this is what the school has to deal with in terms of young people. Like this is their young person. That's what they're going on before they come to school. It's not just that kind of academic pressure. And what's fascinating about that is that those young people who lack those kind of, I'd say, mental health support, and they lack that support in terms of their well-being. No one's really supporting them in that regard. That just naturally affects their academics anyway. So rather than kind of targeting the academics, let's target the source of the issue. Let's target what's really going on behind closed doors. And that essentially to schools will help pile onto the academics and make the academics better. And that's what I noticed in that school that they kind of lacked, which is fair because I've noticed it in many other schools, and it is difficult to cover those topics. But I guess it's just where I stepped in as like external support to kind of be a mentor, but be a personal development mentor. So, working on it, like let's step away from the academics, what's going on at home, what is it you want to open up to about, to me, what's something that you can tell me that's relatable. And then when they start telling you these stories and start opening up more, it's almost like sometimes I see a flashback of myself when I was younger and it was like, yep, I've gone through that. Or sometimes it's far worse. And sometimes like, I haven't really gone through that, but I could resonate with the pain. I can see the pain, and that element of pain or that element of anger, I guess those emotions we can focus on rather than the actual situation. Those emotions we can focus on. And that's how we kind of deal with it. That's how I always have dealt with it. And I've seen that progress. I've seen, working with students in that way, giving them a break from academics. And let's talk about real life. Let's talk about what's really happening. When they get back into lessons, they have something to think about, or they're either at ease. So when they go back into lessons, surprisingly, it has a positive impact on their academics. And it's just something I've realized and something I've always stood by.
So what's the name of your business?
So my social enterprise is called Talk Less Do More, short for TLDM Limited. And as you can gather, we strive to tackle knife crime and youth violence in and around London. We do this by working with young people aged 11 to 17, and we offer services like mentoring, life skills coaching, and extracurricular activities.
Excellent. And is it just you, or have you got somebody else working with you on this? Or
yeah, I have a co-founder working with me on this, so it's just me and one other person at this very moment. Yeah.
And in your mind, when you look at your business, do you see lots of mini kind of yous in different schools? How are you imagining the kind of relationship between these young people and the business itself? Is there a technology solution that you're looking at, or something which reaches out and does more?
Yeah, no, of course, I aim to make it huge. It will be a situation where there's multiple, as you said, me's, but there's multiple just mentors working under my organization and going into every single school. And the aim is it's almost like a spread, right? Because we've acknowledged these kind of negative factors and we want to tackle that with positivity. We want to be positive about that. And we want to kind of use that kind of positive aspect to show that, you know, there is positivity in the world and your world can turn positive regardless of the negative background you have. So in order to kind of spread that, we want to aim to work in as many schools as possible in a concentrated area. So each school has their set amount of students and not one student goes to many different schools. So even if you do work in one school in that neighborhood, there's about 20 to 25 other schools that has children very similar to the school that you're working with. So for me, it's like, yeah, let's diverse and let's get into those schools in that neighborhood. So for example, Croydon is what we're trying to target. And that's just due to how I grew up and my background. It's just something that I've really wanted to do is just kind of target my hometown, transform that and make it very concentrated so that it has a very significant impact and that I can show that to other boroughs of London. So I've seen a lot of organizations dip and dabble into different places in London, which is great, but they're very small areas. They're not concentrated. It's very hard to kind of see. I want it to be visual by people that don't know my organization, but visual to people that come out Croydon Station and go, oh, this place actually looks nice. Like it's not as scary as it used to be. It looks kind of different. Like there's a vibe, there's an aura, there's an energy. And I've learned that you know, in a place there can be that kind of vibrancy that it's available. It's just how do we make that? And with Croydon right now, it's like deadpan. With Croydon right now, like how me and my friends see it now, it's just like, oh, Croydon, okay. Like, oh, where we going? We're going Croydon. Okay. Yeah. Like, it's never like, oh, what, we're going Croydon? Okay, cool. But then there's other areas which have this issue, but it's very vibrant. Like there's Hackney. Hackney is like home to a really vibrant, like obviously it has its issues of knife crime and youth violence, but it's such a vibrant, fun place. Like there's stuff to do in Hackney. It's amazing. It embraces all these cultures and there's that element of you can go out and have a good time. In Croydon, it's like, yeah, I want to be back home by 8 p.m. Like it's different. So it's kind of, you know, like in terms of the bigger picture, it's the community that notices there's a change in Croydon. There's people going into Croydon showing there's a change in Croydon. And essentially everyone in and around Croydon will have that narrative that Croydon's changed. And that's what I aim to do. So I aim to really concentrate my focus in one borough, make that a standpoint and be like, well, you know, Croydon's changed differently. Like, oh, there's this organization that works in every school. Talk, let's do more. Next thing you know, we're in their borough and it comes to a borough of Lewisham or borough of Hackney and all these other areas that have these issues. So that's basically the way I see it growing. It's just growing.
I think that's a lovely vision, because I think that's almost saying that if we can address it from a community perspective and de-risk the environment, that will bring in those businesses, those places, those areas, because they feel more secure and safe in that environment to do more positive things. And I don't think, I mean, I know it's an issue, like you say, in Croydon, and so maybe in Hackney that it's become less of an issue because of the change in the cultural aspect and the vibrancy of that community. But I think it's a global problem, isn't it? You know, we live in a world where there is a lot of disenfranchised people. There's a lot of inequality. There's a lot of wealth, but a lot of poverty. There's a lot of separation between people. So I think having that vision to be able to actually neutralize different aspects of it and actually start at the grassroots level and change that mindset and change that dynamic can actually then start to hopefully filter through new opportunities and new ideas for people so that they can actually be a part of that. So that's really good. I know you had a busy summer. I just wanted to also kind of touch on this because last time we spoke, you were very enthusiastic about it. And I loved this idea of travel, broadening our minds and doing different things and that kind of stuff. So you were in America and you did a summer with Camp America. So just tell me a little bit, first, what made you want to kind of do that? Secondly, what do you feel that you learned from it? And is there or are there things that you can now think about and apply into the world that you now kind of imagine?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, Florida was amazing. Like I always say this to my friends and family, that you know how no one says, the grass ain't green on the other side. That grass is green. That grass over there is greener pastures that I've never seen in my life. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And I'll tell you why. So what actually made me do Camp America was multiple things. I mean, I've always wanted to do it ever since I turned 18, 19. And I guess now with uni ending and I've graduated now, and I have this long summer. In a sense, I'm able to do it financially, and I'm able to support that. And I want to summer away in Florida. I want to see what it is like in America. I just thought it would be a perfect opportunity. But I guess what picked the camp. So there's multiple camps. There's loads. They're all over America. Like the reason why I picked Florida was, one, it's heat. I love the sunshine. I love the summer. I love the heat. So I did want to experience that. 2, I've heard many things about Miami, really wanted to visit there as well. And 3, the reason why I picked that specific camp was to see how the dynamic of the young people that I naturally work with will affect the young people over there and how I can kind of change it. And I guess the dynamic over there was their wealth status. So a lot of the young people that actually attended that summer camp, they had to pay large heaps of money. So these kids were very wealthy. They came from really wealthy backgrounds. But I guess, yeah, the reason why I picked that was dynamic. It was like, look, I work with students who come from a deprived background. I work with students who have these issues that they, and this culture, this very London culture. Let me switch it up. Let me see how it works in Florida. And in Florida, despite the wealth of these young people, obviously the natural instinct of me as a mentor is, this is all great, but let's talk about, real life. Let's talk about what's happening in their life. They go through the same kind of background situation that the young people in Croydon go for. It's only the element of wealth that changes, but the situations that they have is that they, like, very similar to, again, some of these kids that we see is, lack of fatherhood, or there's issues back home. There's trauma, there's PTSD, but yet their energy, their vibe, it's just their energy is very positive, and they know, pardon me, how to overcome it. And yes, they're still young. I worked with kids over there that were from the age about 8 to 17, but a lot of them would talk about how life would be like outside of camp. So the summer camp kind of culture in America is to have fun and enjoy yourself. But the camp that I went to was amazing because they had principles, they had values, they had something called Ripple. And that would be their values, where it's like respect, integrity, play, positive thinking, leadership and engagement. It's these core values that they bring to these young people, regardless of you having fun. Like I'm just here summer camp, I'm just here to have fun, but they still integrate these core values and these core principles, and the young people learn it. So they always come up to me like, that's not very Ripple. And I'm like, wow, you actually like care about these principles? Like it's interesting. But yeah, it's just the vibe and energy. And I guess that what that taught me was that I don't think it's about the weather. I don't think it's about the wealth. I think it's just about the energy that these young people have and the energy that the summer camp is built on. It's built on those core principles, Ripple, but it's also built on, having fun and being a child again and not being scared about what people think about you. You can sing, you can dance, doesn't matter. And I think it's just being a kid again. In London, I was thinking, how do I kind of process that and put it in London? And in London, I think it's more extracurricular activities. So getting them out their shell in that way. And how do I integrate that in TLDM is to enforce like a system, a program for my extracurricular activities that integrate these outdoorsy activities and let the young people be themselves, to basically teach the principles and the core values of TLDM to the young person, not through, one-to-one strict mentoring, also through a fun way. And that they may be able to process it that in that way as well. And it was fascinating.
So do you see sort of kind of like TLDM sort of operating these kind of things in the UK at some point would be kind of exciting if you, in that regard, of putting together summer camps and that kind of thing.
Yeah, honestly, I would love to. I'd love to have a half-term camp or a summer camp. Now, see, these American camps, they were sleepaway. So you're with your young people 24/7 on camp. Like, you live on camp, you eat on camp, you sleep on camp. I don't think they have any of those summer camps in the UK. But if I'm able to make that happen and have a 24/7 sleepaway summer camp or half-term camp, even for a week, and we can enforce these core principles and integrate like the outdoor fun. The young people they're not allowed their phones in summer camp. They're not allowed their phones. So their phone gets given to the members of staff, and the members of staff process their phone and lock it away. They don't have their phone for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, depends on their thing. No phone. All it is just people in the summer camp, the energy, your own energy, and the activities. That's all it was. And I didn't even hear, like, a lot of the young people, I didn't even hear them speak about, oh, I can't wait to go on social media right now, or I wish I can go on TikTok. Never heard it. It's like when they got their phone, they're like, oh yeah, my phone. But they'll put it down and carry on playing outside because they have that energy of playing outside. And
a great way of bringing people together is instigating activities where people feel connected. So how is that kind of thing engaged with in the camps?
They had a system called cabin cleanup. So all the young people, there'll be 12 of us staying in the camp. So it'll be me, another mentor. So that's 2 members of staff, and then 10 young people, 12-year-olds. They were essentially in year 8. They were quite young. The dynamic of the young people in these cabins, they've placed them so that they're not normally kind of someone that they would interact with in school. So these young people are all so different. So after breakfast, they would come back to the cabin and they'd all have a chore. And that chore, all those chores accumulate to cleaning your cabin to the best it can be, like cleaning that cabin. So whether it's shoe rack, whether it's doing the beds, whether it's cleaning the rafters, all these really independent skills that these young people are learning, for one thing. And 2 is teamwork. And 3, it's also compromise. It's like, oh, I didn't want to do the shoe rack today, but I did it yesterday. So, or I haven't done the shoe rack, I don't want to do the shoe rack because it rained, but I'll do it because, no one else wants to do it, so I'll do it anyway. So there's that element, you see that element of young people go through that. Like, you see young people go, you know what, you don't have to do this chore, I'll do it for you. And it's just like, wow, these young people are just growing. And yeah, that element of teamwork, the element of teamwork straight up in the morning, straight after you come back from breakfast, you've had a long night, early morning cabin cleanup, straight into teamwork. And I think it was beautiful to watch the kids just blossom in this environment.
I just want to touch on a little bit about your sort of kind of journey at Essex and Essex Startups to support business development and support students in their journey. So out of the things that you got involved with, and I know you got involved with pretty much everything, you were one of the most enthusiastic of students that we've ever kind of worked with. But is there a couple of things or events or activities or experiences that you got from that university entrepreneurship business support kind of environment, and the learning maybe that you took away from that?
Yeah, definitely. I think attending as much as you can and being enthusiastic is the most important kind of aspect, especially if you have a vision and if you have a dream. And I believe in discipline. So I believe discipline helps you kind of achieve those dreams. So doing what you need to do. And for me was coming into Essex Startups. So I guess that's the first, that innovation center, that was where it kind of kickstarted for me. That's where my dream started to come about, and I can kind of see, piece the vision together, and I guess piece the journey towards that. And I guess in my normal course of business management, it would give me an amazing insight of all these modules, accounting and finance, management, and ethics, and all these core business, all these core kind of modules, which were just knowledge, and I believe in knowledge is power. So the more I know, the better. But there was one module that stuck out to me, was management psychology. So it was about learning about the psychological aspect of the organization, is what people go through, the human behavior, human emotions. And I translated that to the business because, one, I really always wanted to study child psychology and kind of understand young people better, and in a sense upgrade my skill set in terms of working with young people. As I said, like the more I know, the more I feel like I can implement a strategy and work with these young people way better. And then I also took that to Essex Startups. So in Essex Startups, I booked an appointment with you, James, in like 2019, like maybe the first year. And I think I've come up with some horrendous business plans, horrendous business ideas where James is like, yeah, no. And I'm like, yeah, because what you do is, you know what, you wouldn't tell me no, but you would say, work on this, think about this, think about this. And when I realized there's a huge list of things to think about, I think maybe it won't work. So now I'll come back the next year with another kind of business idea. And I'll come back the next year. And that next year was 2021. And I think that's where it kickstarted. That's when I came the idea of, I want to make a social enterprise to tackle knife crime and youth violence. How do I do it? Yeah, you really supported me and you helped me in terms of that mentorship. And then you guided me to those workshops that Essex Startups set up. If you're an Essex student and you want to start up a business, start up an organization, or just learn more about it, go to Essex Startups and attend their workshop. Like, it's actually amazing. The epitome of Essex Startups taught me like everything that I essentially didn't really learn in my actual course. It was the real support, the real life, how a business runs and what a business really and truly is, what marketing is, what the difference of branding is, all these core things that I need to learn about a business and organization. And it was just fascinating. And I think ever since my journey of Essex Startups and all the mornings that I came there and attended the workshops and attended the programs, whether it's iTeams, that was the first one I attended. And it was the BME, I think, the minority support one. That was amazing. There was just so many kind of opportunities that I went there. Amazing.
I mean, as a testament to the team, I think that's phenomenal. And obviously, we'll share your thoughts and everything with that. But I think it's a testament to you and that participation idea and that enthusiasm of engaging with everything and taking on board things as well, which I think is also a really encouraging sign. So I think it's great that that you've done all of that and you've been a part of all of that. Where now? Because I know that you're looking at different programs here for schools. I know that you're thinking about journey of the business. So where now for Neil in 5 years from here?
In 5 years, I aim to have multiple projects running in terms of Talk Less Do More. And we'll be in schools, we'll be in the community. It could be in alternative provisions. I guess it's wherever the young people are situated and whatever client we land in terms of, working in that school. You would not only see us present in that school, but you would see us broadcasting and marketing those things that we're doing. So for example, a school project, if we're in a school running life skills coaching and we're teaching that syllabus that we have, we will run a project or a fundraising event or anything to support us and the school to work together, and we will record those projects. We'll broadcast those events, and we'll show you, we'll really publicate and show you guys what we're doing in, what we've been doing in those 5 years. And yeah, it's being prominent in Croydon. It's being that, building that face of Croydon, knowing that that's Neil Chamroo. He's the founder of Talk Less Do More, and he's in Croydon. Just knowing that it's about Croydon and learning about Croydon. And, learning about, Croydon was classified as a knife crime capital. Like, that's insane. But there's this organization called Talk Let's Do More. They work in schools. They're amazing. They're like mentors. And yeah, just kind of prominent in terms of, one, that community aspect, and two, social media. I aim to market a lot of the things through social media and YouTube. And I want it to be something new, something authentic that organizations don't see.
Okay, I'm going to finish off now with just a few quick-fire questions, and then we'll leave with how people can get in contact with you and where's the best way of finding about your work and how they can access that. So a few quick-fire questions for you. First off, favourite band or piece of music?
J.I. is a rapper, one of my favourite rappers. His name is, J.I. J.I. Prince of New York. He's my favourite, I'd say, rapper. That counts, right?
Yeah. Cool. Last TV series or box set that you engaged with that you really enjoyed?
The Office. The Office.
The American one or the UK one?
Not the UK one. Nowhere near the UK one. I'm sorry. I love what they've done, but the American one is world class. The American one is so funny. So yeah, I love it.
Okay, excellent. Next one is favorite book or reading material that you've enjoyed, but B, that you would recommend to somebody else.
$100 Startup. Amazing. I recommend it to everyone.
The $100 startup.
$100 startup.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Excellent. Your favorite meal on your birthday?
It's rice and lentils with chicken curry.
Excellent.
But it's cultural, but yeah.
Hot and spicy, or?
Oh, of course, yeah. That's the Mauritian way. That spice is, that's mandatory in the food. You can't really get away from it. Yeah.
All right, excellent. Okay, all right. Final bit then is, how can we reach you?
Amazing. If you want to reach out to me, just search my name, Neil Chamroo, on LinkedIn. That's me personally. And if you want to reach out to the organization, then just drop me an email at seaway@tldm.info. And tldm.info is also our website if you want to look up on our website. And if you're interested in joining the team, and if you really, really engage with the vision, you really like working with young people, and you think, the values and the vision that, we, or me personally, aligned with what you guys have, then do drop an email and do check out the website, and that's where you can contact me.
Excellent stuff. And people can reach you through the weave as well.
Amazing. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Neil, thank you very much indeed. That's been brilliant.
Perfect, James. Thank you so much.
This is so inspiring. When somebody who clearly has the talent to do so many different things, he chooses to use that to better the environment where he lives. In our final conversation for this episode, we hear from Essex student Temini Kasumu, who is using her knowledge and cultural upbringing, as well as the skills she has developed studying law, to find innovative and holistic solutions for women.
I'm delighted, absolutely delighted today to be talking to Temini Kasumu, who is basically one of our students at the University of Essex. And we're going to talk a little bit about her journey, but she's got an amazing business, which we want to touch on and talk a little bit about the impact and the way that that business really wants to achieve something fundamental and important. So without further ado, welcome.
Thank you so much, James.
No problem. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Okay, let's just start, because you are an international student and you came, was it from Nigeria?
Yes, from Lagos, Nigeria, where I was born and bred. I came initially to start A-levels when I was about 15, going on 16-ish.
Right.
And then the next step was university, but I'd started studying, I was studying biology, chemistry, and mathematics at A-levels. So it was really a huge transition.
Right.
Studying law at the University of Essex, I went through clearing. So I didn't get into any of the universities that I wanted to go into to study medicine. And I just fell back onto law because that's my dad's background and his dad before him. And my brother studied law as well. So is my younger sister. So it's just in the family.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be like a really comfortable safety net. I'm happy I studied law, especially at the University of Essex, because it was just a really enjoyable experience for me. And I feel like it's such an inclusive space as well. There were so many people from different places across the world that, I really just felt comfortable and at home in another way. So I enjoyed that. And that's how I ended up at University of Essex. And then I went on to do the LPC. And during that time, I just realized I wanted to be doing so much more than law. And that's when I had my first meeting booked in with you.
You spoke eloquently about law being a family business, and something maybe that there was the familiarity about.
Yeah, my dad had a law firm in Lagos, actually. So it was always the thing where I was supposed to go back to work there.
Yeah.
My brother works part-time at my dad's firm, and my sister works at another firm. But I think she does a few things now and then with Kasumu and company. But I just never really wanted to do that. So I was really exploring my options. I wasn't too sure about anything regarding entrepreneurship, how to get started. I remember some of the ideas that I brought to you, and we just went over those, and it was really fun to see. I didn't think I'd be on this path now, but that's life.
Yeah, so it is life. It is life. Was it a hard decision to make at the time, or how did you negotiate that with your family and maybe their expectations? What was it that you explained to them?
This is a really interesting question, because I don't think anyone took it seriously until I spent years working on it, and then finally got the startup visa. So it was always a case where like they just didn't think I was being serious about it. They just felt like law was the way. And it's through working with the startups team and then seeing that it was something that could be beneficial to other people, could be a credible business idea. And then they started to like listen in on my conversations sometimes with other people that I was sharing. And then like we had some sit downs and we talked about it, and they were just so supportive once they figured out that this is something that I'm really passionate about. This is something that I could potentially do and do very well, because they are very supportive. They've always supported me through everything. It's just they felt law was a safer bet. I needed to complete the process of becoming a solicitor because I've studied law. I've done the legal practice course, but you still need to get a training contract here or do law school in Lagos or Abuja or anywhere else and then qualify through that route. So they just really wanted me to do that. And since I didn't do that first, it was a thing where they weren't sure how safe it was, me going out in there, like out into the world without having a fallback. And that was their major concern. But otherwise, they are very supportive. I love my parents.
Excellent. The journey today, right? So we've gone through that transition. We've gone from law into entrepreneurship. Give us a flavour of some of the highlights of that particular journey, and what stands out as something that maybe that you're really proud of, and also something possibly that you feel like you would have done differently at that point.
I think lots of things stand out for me. It's been a very interesting process, and I keep finding out things about myself on this journey, so that's interesting too. I think most recent highlights were when I won the People's Choice Award and the most sustainable startup, but more so the People's Choice, because I know what I'm doing. You know, I know what I'm doing in terms of sustainability. I think about these things. I play them over and over again in my head and work out all the fine details. So I know I'm doing a great job in terms of sustainability. But to be nominated and actually win People's Choice, that's like such a subjective thing that for me, it just really hit me. If that's the right way to phrase it, it really just hit me, you know, that I'm doing well. People are seeing the steps that I'm taking. You know, it's not just in my head, and I don't have to be weighed down by imposter syndrome, you know, because I'm good enough. That was a really good highlight. In terms of doing things differently, I would try and connect with more people from the onset. So I think I'm a sole founder. It comes with its own challenges. I think it's just maybe how I've grown up, just being very independent and working, doing things on my own and being happy with that. But I don't think you go very far when you work alone. I am seeing more and more the benefits of being in a community, you know. I don't think I've been in many communities. So just being in the startup community that's been a highlight too. So leaning on other people and like finding help is something that I would advise other people to do, because I don't think I did that. And I think that's like a very key thing that would help any startup founder. So I think that's a major thing.
So you touched on one of your passions and one of your enthusiasms, which is around sustainability. What was it that really kind of motivated you to think more deeply about how you could impact that aspect?
I think I'd start with veganism. I know it's like a annoying topic for lots of people, but being a vegan really did help me see things differently. I think my first experience with any vegan was when I started my A-levels. So that was here. And there weren't a lot of options in terms of food and things like that. There's lots of ice cream and milk options and lots of burger choices, just lots and lots of stuff now that weren't available then. And it was just a very odd thing to be doing back then, that I thought anyway. Then at the University of Essex, yet again, here we are, I met someone else. And she was a vegan, and she was comfortable with me just doing my own thing, eating chicken in front of her, you know, and she just wasn't too in your face about it. And then she would talk about some of the benefits of veganism. And when I made the choice to try it out, I started to think about things like animal welfare, environmental impact. And that's where that came in for me. And then I started to think about sustainability and exploring other sustainable businesses And then that's when I started to see like all the things that I've been doing, all the things that we do in terms of the single use model that's so like prevalent in our society. You know, it's like the main thing that people do because it's just what's easy and accessible. And then I started to think, okay, how can I incorporate a circular model in a way that is easy in the same way that people use single use things, but still just better for the environment. That's the direction we're going in anyway. And it's funny, brilliant. I had a conversation with a cousin earlier today, and she said she felt cheated with a lot of the lotions that she uses. So she snips through the lotion to get the rest of it out. And I thought, okay, so that's also the plastic and then wasteful in another sense as well in terms of the product. And so my bubble balms come in like these little jars that you can literally scrape all around the corners. There's nothing that goes missing. You know, just use it, getting more out of, you know, whatever you're buying. And also engaging more with what you're buying. When you buy a refill, you have to fill that back in to the jars. That concept, I really did want that to be something that became more commonplace. There's lots of elements with EAR. I could talk about this forever.
Okay, so let's talk about EAR. Let's talk about your business. First off, let's spell it for everybody because we're a podcast. Okay, so yes. How is it spelled? What does it mean? And what does it do?
Okay, so EAR is a play on the word Mother Nature in my native language, Yoruba. But I'm actually from two tribes, so I'm Yoruba and Ishekiri. And they're both tribes in Nigeria, but Yoruba is more prevalent. It's one of the three major tribes that we have. EAR, being related to Mother Nature, was just keying in on using nature to create products and then giving back to nature in terms of how we sustainably consume things in the sense of making compostable packaging, you know, or reusable tins where we're not throwing away after each use, that kind of system. So that's what EAR is about in terms of the name. And I really wanted to link it in, but it did start out being Eid. I don't know if you probably remember it being Eid, which was a play on the word ogede, which means banana. And this is how I'm going to get into the rest of EAR's brand and our message and what we do. It was formerly Eid, which, like I said, was ogede, which is banana. So we were going to make banana fiber sanitary towels, and we are close now. So I'm happy to say, hopefully we will be seeing samples very, very soon of the product. It's been 3 years talking about this and doing research, and finally it's I feel like it might be coming to a sort of conclusion. When I say sort of, because the product still needs work, but making progress, and I'm so happy about that. We will be making sanitary towels out of banana fibers. We also make herbal teas to help ease period pain and PMS. We're also going to be releasing another tea to manage hormonal imbalances. So that should be another focus that we gear into eventually. We make a vulva balm, so for vulva care, and then we will have other products in the line, but we are starting with just a couple of products for now, and seeing how our customers react to them, you know, and seeing how we can do better.
There's a theme there, which is obviously the circularity that comes from. Yes. We want to use the banana, and I'm right in saying that the bit of the banana that we're using is the bit that would normally get disposed of, composted, or just add to CO2 in terms of the way you're using it and repurposing it from that perspective, which is hugely valuable. The second aspect of that is about women and about empowering women to engage with these products. I can understand it from the sustainability point of view, but from the women perspective, what is it that's sort of kind of out there saying I need to do?
I love this question because it's very personal. I used to have terrible, debilitating period pain. I couldn't do anything, and I went to doctors and I was prescribed painkillers that didn't work. And that's not to say Western medicine isn't great, it is, but you know, there are elements, you know, where herbalism and holistic alternative medicine can also really help. You know, so I don't think we need to forego ancient methods and ways altogether, we can pretty much have a beautiful marriage between the two. So by that I mean Western medicine, Asian medicine, African medicine. I really want that to be what E is about anyway. So I do lots of educational posts, and that's Western medicine related, on EA. So EA is also just about educating women about their bodies, and that's also a personal thing. I didn't know much about my body, and it's my body, I didn't know that there was a difference between the vagina and the vulva, and that's so key because they have different maintenance requirements. The vagina is self-cleansing. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to douche. Meanwhile, there are so many products in the market that promote douching the vagina, which is completely unnecessary and actually really bad for women who use them. So it's things like that, pushing products that we don't need, number one, and also products that are harmful to our bodies. So I want to do away with that. I want EA to be the space where we educate women about what's needed, what's not, what's optional, and can give you a pleasurable experience if that's what you're looking for, and things like that. That's my main focus. So it is very personal. It started with me having period pain and consulting my mum about the other herbs that she was exposed to growing up, and she suggested Igidija, which is grains of selim. So I saved the African name because that's how I started out knowing the herb by. And then, so it's called grains of selim in English, and then also hibiscus. That was also recommended by her. And then I added in chamomile and some Ceylon cinnamon, which is from Sri Lanka. That just really added to the blend. It made it not just in terms of the ingredients that we've been used, but also the taste. So lots of people liked how it tastes. And that's another thing that I've experienced personally. When you want to have a herbal product that is proposing to help you in any way, it just tastes very disgusting. And it just tastes very bad, and so it's really hard to consume. I didn't want that to be the case. I wanted it to be a case where people were happy to drink it because I knew that they would actually drink it and it would then be able to help them. So from that perspective, that's where the tea came in. I felt I really just wanted to offer a holistic service. I didn't want to just have sanitary towels, because the menstrual cycle is not just about menstruation, and we only tend to focus on menstruation and ovulation, which is when we get pregnant. So when we are having visible signs that something's different through bleeding, or when we can give back to the world in terms of childbearing, and so I wanted to talk about the in between, and the what comes after ovulation as well. So the luteal phase in preparation for menstruation, to talk about the follicular phase, so which often coincides with the menstrual phase where you're bleeding and then carries on afterwards. So things like that were very, very key for me because I was going through them. I'm going through them. So I like the whole idea of women-made businesses, women for women, so you understand that we go through it, so we understand it, and that's why we're so passionate about it. So it's not to exclude men, it's just to say, oh, I hear you, I see you, I get it, because I'm going through it. So that kind of message.
In terms of the work that you're doing, say, for instance, back in sort of Nigeria, you're engaging with the supply chain out there. Yes. Obviously, the banana sort of kind of plantations and various other things. I guess a lot of that, the tea content is coming from domestic sources, and that is a lot of the educational process as well, giving back to young women in your country.
That is the plan. Yes, that is the plan. I am trying to raise more funding so I can actually do something and not just be talking, because I feel like that's so key. I have recently engaged with Environmental. They're a sector from a company called wen.org in the UK, and I was offering some tea samples because they made a post about the stats for women going through menstrual pain, and nothing's been done about it. And I wanted to offer some of the menstrual support teas for free, so I could give help in that way. So I'm not really making a profit currently, but I don't think it should stop me from giving back. And maybe that's just the person I am. But yeah, I can imagine when we do start to make profit, it's been a dream of mine to give back to certain causes. I know I've spoken to you about things like VVF, so vaginal vestibular issues, where there's I don't want to be too graphic.
Fine, don't worry. Yeah.
I don't want to be too graphic, but it can make it very difficult for women to live with that condition. So with VVF, because they aren't in control of their bladder,
yeah.
so to speak. It's just a really sad thing that happens, because most of the reason behind it is because little children are married off too early.
Right.
So we don't need to get into that.
No, we don't need
what comes in with that. So it's just really sad that is one of the major causes of it, so that's been one thing that I've really wanted to help out with. There's other things like this is cultural also, with specific cultures where they have hyenas, so people that are allocated to sleep with virgins, kind of in a way to teach them how to be before they get married or whatever, and there's no protection involved. So just doing away with like certain things, that's where the knowledge aspect comes in, because it's just really ridiculous. I think ridiculous isn't even the right word. So yeah, there's lots of things, I really do want to make an impact in a good way, not just with the environment, but with people who need it.
I think, knowing you, the years that we've sort of kind of worked and looked at things together in that regard, I think your passion, your willingness to talk about it at a level which is open, discussive, but it also gets people thinking, which I think is hugely important. That may actually come from your legal background as well, from the point of view that, I always think a good lawyer is somebody that can tell a good story as well, in that regard. So you probably got that kind of that background. I'm no doubt that you're going to get that message out there in that area. But coming back to the business itself, you've got challenges. You spoke about you being a sole founder, the challenges with that. Yes, it's revealing, you're aware or quite self-aware about your strengths and your weaknesses within that. I can think that your strengths are the passion, the enthusiasm, the visual aspects as well, the brand, which is a very beautiful brand to look at and to engage with. Where in that kind of scheme of thing do you think to yourself, these are areas potentially where there are weaknesses in what we're doing, and these are the spaces that I would like to fill?
I think I'd start with marketing. I recently had a social media manager. So it was a company that I was working on. I'm not going to say the name of the company. They focused on affordable social media representation for smaller businesses, and they make it affordable. And I just was really kind of happy with the process, but it taught me so much, because I didn't see a lot of things that they raised, and just creating content and the schedules of that. So I think marketing is one thing that I would need to focus on. And then PR. I don't think I've had any real PR myself outside of the startups community, because yes, there have been blog features and that's PR, but outside of that, I've not had any PR. And so I think that's something that is a weakness for me, because those two things really help get the message out there. So without them, I'm limited in scope with my reach. I'm not reaching enough people, not reaching enough potential investors or customers, just basically my stakeholders. I'm not reaching them. And so that's key for me, I think, in terms of filling. I need to fill that gap. I think also just sourcing funding. I applied to quite a few funding applications. I think I've done about 7 this year. And yes, it's just dealing with those rejections. Sometimes it can be hard, but it's just reminding myself why I've started, where I want to go, and just pushing through. You can't always have everything, but you do have to work what you do have. So I lean back on that a lot, and it's been helping.
I think without a shadow of doubt, when you look at it from the point of view of handling rejections, because everybody goes through this funding process, and we're equally in that stage with our development where we're pitching to people, where we're pitching and tendering for work, and we're doing various different bits and pieces, and a lot of it falls on stony ground, and you'll think to yourself, how do I keep going? And you're looking at the bigger picture, which is really, really important to understand that if we keep that North Star in focus, I think that's the bit that will really help us overcome and push the boulder up the hill a bit more. It is challenging, but again, the community side of it, I think, is really important.
I love that you've mentioned the community aspect, because so one day when I had a particularly challenging time handling not submitting an application, I was very convinced that, you know, that was the end of my journey, because I was just so exhausted with lots of things. I spoke to Magda, who's also with the Weave.
Yeah.
Special shout out to Magda as well. And she just really helped me see things in a different way. So I did, connecting with people is so important. I had my sister there with me, and my sister's usually able to get through to me. But that day, something just wasn't like clicking in her, like in how she was speaking to me. And I don't know why, but it's just one of those things. So I went on a call with Magda, kind of like mentorship that I have with you. And we just spoke, and I just felt so much better. And like, I remembered I had a North Star to start with. So
she's phenomenal when she does that. But yes, you're right. I mean, the community side and having that around, is that something, again, with the Essex startups team that's there? I think they've done an exceptional job when it comes to building and starting to build that community. I know COVID and lockdown and the campus.
Even through COVID, it was incredible. It was incredible because I started working with the Essex Startups team during COVID. So I can imagine what it was like before that. It was incredible, and it still is incredible. I still have support. I think I'm 5 years post-grad almost, and I'm still receiving support. So it's pretty incredible. I love it. There's always something going on as well.
And I think, again, a testament to the team, the university, for recognizing the value of an entrepreneurial outcome when it comes to graduation as well. And it wasn't like that in many universities 10 years ago. We meet a lot of people who say, wow, it was never like that in my day. You know, it was always that. So I think that plays testament to the university and to the culture that's trying to emerge through all of this.
I think that's also with the recent program that we did together, when you had the careers advice people come in and be a part of that, just to show that there are different avenues. You don't always have to just go with just your degree alone, whatever is assigned. So for instance, if you started with law like me, you don't necessarily have to become a lawyer. There's so many ways that you could use your law degree. Yes, I use my law degree, but there are other things that you could use it for, is the point. You don't need to get anxious and stressed out about, you know, maybe perhaps if you felt like you chose the wrong degree. There's no such thing. You know, you can use that towards anything else in your future, and that's just really important to note. So I like that's something that's being promoted now more so than ever.
Yeah, and that's hugely important. And I think I found that personally when I went through my own career transition, was how does one utilize skills and qualities that you've got from one industry or one environment, and how do you reshape them, make them relevant for new development and new ideas? Yes. And I think you've got that mindset to be able to say, I have these skills. What does law teach me? The disciplines of, you know, the academic disciplines, the rigor behind it, the detail that you kind of immerse yourself. So just tell me a little bit about the future. What would IA look and recognize as being a successful business in 5-10 years' time?
I think if we became a household name, that would be pretty great. That would be a huge marker for success for me, firstly. I think also if I had spaces, lots of spaces where women could be comfortable just being themselves, like talking about their problems, because I know this is a sensitive thing, but I feel like sometimes when I speak to people at pop-ups, things like that, I get the sense that they don't want to talk about these things, you know, so they might just shy away from it, or just maybe even lie about it because they don't want to be seen as having a certain condition, or, you know, having trouble at all. You know, we're just supposed to be these perfect beings sometimes, I think, and that's not the case. So I feel like communicating when things are going wrong, or, you know, you're not sure about something, openly, and not feeling that shame about your own body and what it's going through, that would be another key marker for me. So that would be the second. I think third, I would be if I'm actually helping people from less fortunate backgrounds. You know, I've been fortunate. My dad has paid for my education. It's been private education, and he's still supporting me now, even now. So I think another key marker for me would be to help other people. I haven't had everything that I want in life. No, by no means. I'm not rich in that sense. No, that would be nice. No, that would be nice, but no. So to help other people who basically a lot of times have nothing, that would be another key marker for me to say, yes, EA has done what I wanted it to do. That's the future of EA for me. So those three things are really important to me. Finally, I would say convincing people to change their mindset about the single use structure economy that we have going on, is people to think, oh, I can do this instead of this. Even if it's more difficult, I would be happy if, because of EA, people felt, let me actually do this extra step just because it's better for the environment, that kind of thing. Or people thinking, how can I offset my carbon emissions today? And then for EA to have a system where we help with that. So I've bought from this company before. It's a yoga company, and they plant a tree for you with every purchase. That's amazing. So if I could have something like that, where I'm helping my customers as well without them thinking too much about it, they're just buying one thing and I'm helping them offset their carbon emissions. Total, those four things would mean success in a really big way for EA.
I think there's a couple of things there. I think I love this idea of a brand becoming more than just simply about selling product. It's about providing a safe space for its community. It's about opening up conversations in different ways. It's about educating people and changing their mindsets about what they're doing. And I think you've got all of that. I always remember for me, there are kind of four key areas of brand, or three that you focus on, one of which is purpose, being central about what it is that you're actually trying to achieve with all of this. And I think you've got that clarity within your mind. I think it's about community as opposed to customers. I think customers live in our communities, but communities go beyond that remit. And I think it's about technology as well, because it's the way that we can facilitate all of this good stuff going on. And it's the narrative that overrides that whole thing. That then becomes the brand, to the way that we want it to communicate. If I look at a brand and it's got those elements and it's talking about things in a very humanistic and emotive way, for me, that's hugely relevant. And it's what we do in our accelerator programs. It's what we do with a lot of the stuff, is get people to start talking about those conversations in more meaningful ways.
You touched on one of the weaknesses I don't think I mentioned. So technology, I think that's another thing, like utilizing it in the way that is great for growth anyway. Yeah. I don't think I use it as it should be used. I think that's another thing I've learned.
It's massively challenging for a lot of businesses, because every business this day and age has to be a technology-based business. It has to embed technology into its processes in order to create efficiencies and room for it to grow and for it to scale. But it has to be manageable and directional within the business. So in other words, it's not just about bolting on something. So what we're trying to do within the Weave is build up a toolbox of technologies that people can tap into, whether it's AI, whether it's platforms, whatever it is that we've got access to, that we can share within the community and say, look, just dip in. We can code run events through our AirMeet platform. We can facilitate other things, through AI technologies that we've got. Okay, quick fire round. Favorite band, favorite bit of music?
1975, favorite band.
Oh, excellent. So they're very relevant at the moment, aren't they? Favorite box set film that you last saw or engaged with?
In the cinema, Equalizer. Super great. Loved it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I enjoy those films enormously. Favorite book, last book you read, or favorite book that you would recommend?
A favorite book, I would say The Power of the Subconscious Mind, or Atomic Habits. Yeah, right now. And that's just because those are the most recent ones that I've read. I like each book I read in succession. It's my favorite book for that time.
Lovely. And I feel that the next question is going to be a nice sort of kind of vegan sort of outing, but the meal that you would like to eat on your birthday.
Oh, egusi, and I had that on my birthday. My birthday was last week.
And what was it called?
Egusi. So it's basically a soup. It's a Nigerian meal. It's a soup made with melon seeds and some spinach and tomatoes, or less so for some people, onions. It's just really delicious and lots of spice.
Excellent
Good
stuff.
stuff in there
Good
too.
stuff. All right, Temini, thank you very much indeed for your time, and thank you for being on the podcast. Just the final part of this, how can people reach you? Where's the best place to get hold of you?
So I think Instagram at the moment, or email. So you can reach me at weareia, spelled EIIA. That's on Instagram. And then also on our website, you can reach us through the chat function on our website. And our website is called weareia.com. And then also by email, hello@weareia.com. Just make it very easy to get in touch with us. So we are Mother Nature is the idea.
I'll be honest, when I started working for The Weave, I never thought I'd be editing a podcast which featured a company making hygiene products from bananas. What a joy it is to see driven entrepreneurs looking at a waste product and seeing how it could be used to benefit others. I hope she reaches her markers of success as soon as possible. And as a side note, it's always great to hear from another fellow vegan. Not only is she making business decisions that reflects her commitment to people and the environment, but she is living that in her daily choices. So there we have it, another collection of inspiration from our region. As I mentioned before, we have a free community that can be found over at wearetheweave.co.uk, which has so much to help you in your entrepreneurial journey. Myself and James look forward to seeing you there. Obviously, we'll put all the links to everybody that spoke today in our show notes, and I just wanted to take the time to thank all those who have taken part in this episode. We've got a great show for you coming up next time, including a conversation about a talking therapy you may never have heard of, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, I've been Adam Roxby from The Weave, and I will see you on the inside.